A boardroom in Nashville, 1974. Fluorescent lights illuminate tense faces around an oak table. Dolly Parton, barely 28, surveys the contracts before her. Her mentor, the man who discovered her and made her a star, awaits her response. Porter Wagoner has been her partner for 7 years, her springboard to fame. But now she must choose, remain his protégé or risk everything for independence. The silence in the room is heavy. Outside, on the streets of Music City, millions of dollars, decades of work, and an entire career hang in the balance. This decision will cost her everything she has built. And yet, she will sign. But to understand that decision, we must go back 28 years. Locust Ridge, Tennessee, 1946. A narrow valley nestled in the Great Smoky Mountains, where the mist clings to the pines like a secret. In a one-room cabin, without electricity or running water, a woman gives birth on a straw mattress. It is January 19th, and winter bites fiercely. The doctor has been paid with a bag of cornmeal. The baby is born small but with powerful lungs. Her name will be Dolly Rebecca Parton, the fourth of what will eventually become 12 children. The cabin smells of wood smoke and boiled beans. Robert Lee Parton, the father, is a subsistence farmer who can't read or write. He works the fields from sunrise to sunset, but the Rocky Mountain soil yields little. Avi Lee, the mother, sings as she cooks, washes, and sews clothes from scraps. The children sleep 3 or 4 to a bed. In winter, the wind whistles through the cracks in the wooden walls. Dolly won't wear her first pair of shoes until she's 8. The bathroom is an outdoor latrine. Water is carried in buckets from a nearby stream. This isn't romanticized poverty from a movie, it's real hunger, biting cold, and the constant humiliation of being the poor Partons of the valley. But in that cabin there is more than poverty, there is music. The mother sings Appalachian ballads passed down through generations. The grandfather plays the fiddle on the porch. Dolly is barely 5 years old when she begins composing her own songs. There are no instruments to buy, so she builds a guitar out of an old can and wire strings. Her voice, even in childhood, has a peculiar timbre, crystalline, with a natural vibrato that sounds too mature for her age. On Sundays she sings at the local Pentecostal church, where religious fervor and music intertwine in ecstatic celebrations. The congregations are mesmerized by this little girl with an angelic voice and tousled blonde hair. 1956. Dolly is 10 years old when she first steps onto a professional stage. It's a local radio station in Knoxville, a 2-hour drive away on winding mountain roads. Her uncle, Bill Owens, the only one in the family with ambitions beyond the valley, drives her in his beat-up pickup truck. Dolly is wearing her best dress, made by her mother from Flowers sack fabric. In the studio, adult technicians watch her with skepticism. But when she begins to sing, something shifts in the atmosphere. Her voice fills the room with an impossible maturity. She sings of pain, loss, and longing with an understanding she shouldn't possess at her age. The technicians exchange glances. This girl has something. Back in Locust Ridge, Dolly announces her plan. She'll go to Nashville and become a star. Her father snorts, not cruelly, but with the certainty of someone who understands the harsh realities of the world. Poor girls from the mountains don't become stars. They marry young, have children, and repeat the cycle of poverty. But Avi Lee, her mother, sees something different in her daughter. That fierce determination, that inner light that even poverty can't extinguish. She tells Dolly, if God gave you that gift, it would be a sin not to use it. These are words Dolly will carry with her like a talisman. Every night, before falling asleep in that shared bed, she closes her eyes and visualizes her name in neon lights. The day after her high school graduation, 1964. Dolly is 18 years old and has a cardboard suitcase. On the Greyhound bus to Nashville, she watches the mountains recede through the window. All she owns are her songs, scribbled on napkins and scraps of paper, stored in an old shoebox. Her Uncle Bill has promised to help her, but Nashville is a graveyard of broken dreams. Thousands of young people arrive every year with guitars and hopes. Most return defeated within months. As the bus cuts through the Tennessee landscape, Dolly makes a silent promise. She will never return to Locust Ridge a failure. She will succeed or die trying. Nashville, 1964. Music Row is a labyrinth of recording studios, honky-tonk bars, and record label offices. Dolly walks those streets with determination, knocking on doors, leaving homemade demos, singing for anyone who will listen. She sleeps on her uncle's couch, works washing dishes at a diner. The nights are the worst. When the neon lights go out and exhaustion hits her, doubt whispers. Maybe her father was right. Maybe she's just another dreamer. But then she remembers the cold of that cabin, the hunger, the humiliation. And she knows she can't go back. Not without trying everything. One day in 1965, after months of rejections, a producer called. Monument Records wanted to record one of her songs. It was a minor contract, almost insulting in financial terms, but it was real. Dolly signed with trembling hands. The song wouldn't be an immediate hit, barely causing a stir on country radio, but it was enough. It was proof that her voice deserved to be heard. That night, in the tiny apartment she now shared with other aspiring singers, Dolly wept with relief. She had taken the first step on a seemingly endless ladder. But early success comes at a price. The contracts she signs in those early years, desperate for any opportunity, are designed to exploit the naive. She gives away the rights to her songs for minimal advances. She signs exclusivity agreements that tie her to mediocre producers. Every small step forward chains her further to a system that enriches executives while keeping artists perpetually indebted. And when she finally achieves true fame, when her name begins to shine, she will discover that all that success belongs to others. Porter Wagoner, the man who is about to make her a star, will also be her gilded jailer. 1967. Porter Wagoner is already a living legend, host of America's most popular country television show, with dazzling rhinestone suits and an unmistakable blonde pompadour. His show airs weekly in millions of homes. He's the star maker, the man with the power to turn unknowns into icons. When he's looking for a new, singing girl, for his show, hundreds audition. But when Dolly Parton walks into that room, barely 21 years old, dressed in a way that's a bit too flashy and with that impossibly voluminous blonde hair, Porter knows he's found something special. Not just talent, pure television magic. The contract Porter offers is generous by the standards of the time. Dolly will become a regular attraction on his show, they will record duets, and he will be her mentor and manager. In return, Porter controls her career. What she sings, what she records, where she appears. For a young woman from the mountains with no legal education or business experience, it seems like the opportunity of a lifetime. She signs without reading the fine print. She doesn't understand that she has just sold her artistic freedom for 7 years. Porter isn't a villain. He genuinely believes he knows what's best for her. But his vision of Dolly is limited. He wants to keep her as the sweet mountain girl, forever in his shadow. During 1967 and 1968, the formula worked spectacularly. Porter and Dolly's duets climbed the country charts. Their on-stage chemistry was undeniable. He, the established silver-haired heartthrob, she, the young blonde with an angelic voice and curves impossible to ignore. Audiences adored them. Dolly became a household name, her face appeared in magazines, her voice was played on millions of radios. She bought her first house, sent money to her family in the mountains. For the first time in her life, she experienced financial security. But beneath the glitter of success, something began to rot. The problem arises slowly. Porter decides which songs Dolly records, favoring traditional, conservative country. But her compositions are more complex, more personal, more daring. He rejects them. Porter designs her image, the dresses she wears, how she styles her hair, even how she should smile in photos. Dolly is naturally outgoing, witty, with a subversive sense of humor. Porter prefers her to be demure and sweet. Slowly, the real woman begins to disappear behind the doll Porter constructs. And Dolly, grateful for the opportunity, initially accepts. But frustration grows like a dark seed. 1966, a year before she met Porter. Dolly secretly marries Carl Dean, an asphalt worker she met on her first day in Nashville. The wedding is a discreet ceremony in Georgia, far from the spotlight. Carl is the antithesis of the music industry, quiet, private, with no ambitions for fame. Their relationship becomes Dolly's refuge, the only place where she can simply be herself. But Carl intentionally remains invisible. For decades, he will rarely appear in public with her. This secret marriage becomes her anchor of sanity as the outside world consumes her. 1973. Dolly writes Jolene, inspired by a young redhead flirting with Carl on a park bench. The song is unlike anything she's ever done, vulnerable, desperate, with a hypnotic melody that blends country with something darker. When Porter hears it, he hesitates. It's too strange, too personal. But Dolly persists, and against his better judgment, he gives in. Jolene becomes an instant phenomenon. Sales explode. Critics acclaim her songwriting genius. And in that moment, Dolly understands something crucial. Her artistic instinct is stronger than Porter's. She has surpassed her mentor. 1974. Dolly requests a private meeting with Porter. In his office, overlooking Music Row, she explains her desire. She wants to end their partnership, pursue an unrestricted solo career, record her own songs, and control her image. Porter reacts as if he's been slapped. After everything he's done for her, is this how she repays him? She reminds him who discovered her, who made her famous, who risked her reputation. Without him, she argues, she would be nobody. The meeting ends inconclusively. Dolly leaves with a racing heart and a crystal-clear certainty. She must escape, no matter the cost. But contracts are unbreakable. Porter's lawyers make it clear, if Dolly unilaterally breaks the agreement, he can sue her for millions, bankrupting her. He can block the release of her songs. He can destroy her career before it even begins. Dolly is caught between the success she has achieved and the future she envisions. The nights are agonizing. Should she settle for a successful but limited career? Or risk everything for creative freedom? The pressure takes a physical toll. She loses weight, develops insomnia, and her hair literally begins to fall out from the stress. In her desperation, Dolly does what she's always done. She writes. In a single afternoon, she composes I Will Always Love You, a heartbreaking ballad about having to leave someone you love for your own good. The lyrics hold nothing back. They speak directly to Porter, thanking him for everything he did for her but declaring that she must go her own way. It's simultaneously a declaration of independence and a love letter. When she finishes, Dolly knows she has something special. This song will be her ticket out. But first, she must find the courage to sing it to Porter. We return to that boardroom. Dolly picks up her guitar and, her voice cracking, sings I Will Always Love You to Porter. There's no backing band, no production. Just her voice and that devastatingly simple melody. As she sings, tears stream down her face. Porter listens, motionless, his expression impenetrable. When she finishes, the silence stretches on forever. Finally, Porter speaks, "That's the best song you've ever written." And in that moment, they both know it's over. He can't hold on to someone with that level of talent. The terms of their separation will be brutal. Dolly must pay him hundreds of thousands of dollars, relinquish royalties, and hand over control of past recordings. But she will be free. And that freedom will change everything. 1975. Dolly Parton, now 29, faces the music market as a completely independent artist for the first time. The separation from Porter has cost her almost her entire accumulated fortune. Legal fees have left her with considerable debt. But more frightening than the financial situation is the question on everyone's mind. Can Dolly Parton be successful without Porter Wagoner? Skeptics abound. In Nashville, they're betting against her. A woman alone, without a male mentor, wanting total creative control. It's an unthinkable model in the country music industry of the 70s. Her first independent decision will be her boldest, to cross over into pop. The country music community reacted with fury to her move toward pop. For purists, it was a betrayal. Dolly was selling out her musical heritage for mainstream money. Country radio stations boycotted her. Former fans sent her hate mail. In Nashville, they called her a sellout, a traitor. But Dolly understood something they didn't. Country music has its limits. To achieve true greatness, to build the empire she envisioned, she needed the broader audiences that only pop could offer. Her genre crossing wasn't selling out, it was strategy. And she had the perfect material to make it work. 1977. Here You Come Again is a calculated gamble, a pop song with country undertones, produced to be played on any radio station in the country. When it's released, purists predict failure. Instead, the song explodes. It reaches #1 on both the pop and country charts simultaneously, a nearly unprecedented achievement. Suddenly, Dolly isn't just a country star, she's a cultural phenomenon. She appears on national television shows, her interviews revealing a quick wit and a charisma that transcends genres. The girl from the mountains is becoming an American icon. But musical success is only part of her strategy. Dolly intuitively understands something revolutionary. In the age of television, image is power. She deliberately constructs an extreme visual persona, ever higher blonde beehive hair, dramatic makeup, tight sequin dresses, long painted nails. She is a caricature of Southern femininity taken to the extreme. Critics accuse her of perpetuating stereotypes. But Dolly is smarter than that. She is taking control of her own objectification, turning perceived superficiality into armor. When they underestimate her because of her appearance, she strikes them back with intelligence and talent. In interviews, Dolly perfects a brilliant technique, making jokes about herself before others can. It costs a lot of money to look this cheap, she quips. She speaks openly about her breast implants, her wig, yes, that famous hair has always been a wig, her heavy makeup. By anticipating criticism with humor, she disarms it. No one can make fun of her more effectively than herself. Behind the laughter lies brilliant strategy. She controls the narrative surrounding her image, turning it into comedy rather than vulnerability. It's a masterclass in public relations decades before the term even existed. 1979. Hollywood studios notice Dolly's television charisma and offer her her first starring film role, 9 to 5, a comedy about secretaries who rebel against their sexist boss. Dolly has never acted professionally. Hollywood veterans bet she'll fail. But she studies obsessively, arrives on set hours early, and memorizes not only her lines but everyone else's. And when the cameras start rolling, something magical happens. Her natural authenticity transcends her technical inexperience. She acts as if the camera were a friend to whom she's telling a story. The chemistry with Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin is instantaneous. 9 to 5 premiered in 1980 and was a massive hit, grossing over $100 million. But Dolly didn't stop there. She composed the theme song, a catchy labor anthem mimicking the sound of typewriters. The song reached #1, stayed on the charts for months, and became an accidental feminist anthem. Suddenly, Dolly was a movie star and had the biggest pop hit of her career. It was a 1-2 punch that cemented her status as a crossover superstar. The doors swung wide open. More movies, more albums, more opportunities. But each new success brought intensified scrutiny. With massive fame comes constant invasion. Paparazzi hound her. Tabloids invent stories about her marriage, her body, her alleged affairs. They are particularly obsessed with her relationship with Carl Dean. His invisibility fuels conspiracy theories. Does he really exist? Is the marriage a sham? Dolly remains silent about her private life, but the stress is immense. The woman who built her career on authenticity must now hide her true self behind layers of public personas. The dissociation deepens. Dolly Parton the brand versus Dolly the person. 1982. The physical and emotional exhaustion finally takes its toll. Dolly develops severe endometriosis that requires surgery. Complications result in a partial hysterectomy, forever eliminating her possibility of having biological children. For someone raised with traditional Appalachian family values, where motherhood is central to her identity, it is devastating. She falls into a deep depression. She gains weight dramatically. She contemplates suicide. Sitting in her Nashville mansion, surrounded by symbols of success but empty inside, Dolly hits rock bottom. Her dog literally saves her. When she is about to do something irrevocable, the animal jumps on her, breaking her trance. Crisis becomes rebirth. Dolly seeks therapy, adjusts her medication, and most importantly, reconnects with her original purpose. She didn't enter the business for fame or money, but for the love of music and storytelling. She begins writing again from that authentic place. She slows down her grueling work pace. She sets boundaries. And she formulates a bold plan. If Hollywood can have movie studios, why can't she have her own theme park? The idea seems ridiculous. A country singer opening an amusement park in the Tennessee mountains. Everyone around her tells her it's crazy. But Dolly has learned to trust her instincts. And those instincts tell her that Dollywood will change everything. 1986. Rolling Hills in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, just miles from where Dolly was born. A small amusement park already exists here, owned by the Hershon brothers, struggling financially. They propose a partnership to turn it into a Dolly Parton-branded theme park. Her financial advisors beg her to reject the idea. Theme parks are high-risk ventures, requiring massive investment, and most fail. But Dolly sees something they don't, an opportunity to create jobs in the poorest region of Tennessee, to bring prosperity to the mountains she loves. Dollywood will not just be entertainment, it will be redemption. Dolly envisions Dollywood as the anti-Disneyland, authentic instead of artificial, celebrating real Appalachian culture instead of generic fantasy. There will be artisans demonstrating traditional crafts, blacksmithing, glass-blowing, old-fashioned candy making. Live bluegrass music all day. Home-style Southern food. Thrilling roller coasters, yes, but also a museum celebrating the region's history. It will be a love letter to her heritage, proof that success doesn't mean forgetting where you came from. She's investing millions of her own money. It's the biggest gamble of her life. But the local community reacts with suspicion. Many remember Dolly as the Parton girl, the poorest in the valley. Who is she now, coming in with her Hollywood airs? They fear Dollywood will turn their town into a cheap tourist circus. At community meetings, residents voice their concerns. Traffic, noise, the commercialization of their culture. Dolly attends these meetings personally, without bodyguards or an entourage. She speaks honestly, she acknowledges fears, promises to hire locally, and commits to cultural preservation. Slowly she wins hearts. But the real test will come when the gates open. Summer of 1986. Dollywood's opening day dawns with perfect blue skies. Dolly stands at the entrance, dressed in her signature splendor, personally greeting the first visitors. News cameras capture everything. The first few hours are chaotic. Ticketing systems fail, some rides malfunction, and the kitchens are overwhelmed. But the power is on. Families explore with delight. Children scream on the roller coasters. Artisans proudly demonstrate their crafts. By the end of the day, attendance projections have been exceeded. Dollywood is a success. But Dolly doesn't rest on her initial success. She constantly reinvests profits in expansion, new attractions, improved shows, exquisite landscaping. And most importantly, She delivers on her promise of jobs. Dollywood becomes the largest private employer in the region, offering thousands of full-time jobs with benefits in an area where manufacturing has collapsed. She pays above-average wages. She offers college scholarships to employees' children. When workers face emergencies, Dolly personally intervenes with financial assistance. It's not just philanthropy, it's investment in her community. As Dollywood grows, it becomes an unexpected preserver of Appalachian culture. Traditional crafts that were dying out, basket making, wood carving, pottery, find new audiences. Elderly artisans teach younger generations. Bluegrass music, marginalized in mainstream America, thrives on the Dollywood stage. The park becomes a living archive, educating millions about a culture that the rest of America has ignored or ridiculed. Dolly transforms entertainment into cultural education, proving that the two are not mutually exclusive. Decade after decade, Dollywood evolves. Water parks, luxury resorts, and Broadway shows are added. By 2020, it was attracting more than 3 million visitors annually, generating hundreds of millions in revenue. But it never loses its essence. Dolly appears regularly, not as a distant mascot but as a genuine presence. She walks among crowds, hugs fans, and poses for countless selfies. She knows employees by name and asks about their families. Dollywood is its greatest achievement not because it is financially successful, but because it embodies its values: hard work, community, and gratitude. Not everything is idyllic. Critics argue that Dollywood Disneyfies Appalachian culture, turning it into a sanitized version for tourist consumption. They point out that the mountain families still struggle with poverty while the park generates millions. Activists press Dolly on LGBTQ+ issues. Why doesn't someone with a massive gay fanbase speak out more loudly about rights? Dolly navigates these criticisms with diplomatic care, avoiding direct conflict but hinting at progressivism. Her position is complicated, maintaining universal appeal while satisfying diverse expectations. Not everyone is satisfied. By 2010, economic studies showed the impact of Dollywood. The region around Pigeon Forge had been transformed from an impoverished area into a thriving tourist destination. Restaurants, hotels, and shops flourished. Local tax revenues multiplied. Living standards improved dramatically. Dolly proved a unique model, a celebrity who not only extracts value from her home community but actively reinvests and transforms it. Economists study Dollywood as a case of culture-led regional economic development. However, gentrification also brought challenges. Housing costs rose, long-time residents were displaced, and the character of the region changed. Success had complex consequences that even Dolly couldn't fully control. In interviews about Dollywood, Dolly repeatedly reveals her deepest motivation. As a child, her family was so poor that entertainment was impossible. She never visited amusement parks, rarely saw movies. That deprivation left a wound. Dollywood is her way of ensuring that poor mountain families can experience the magic she never had. She offers massive discounts to local residents, affordable season passes, and special community days. She sees families like hers enjoying themselves, children like her experiencing joy that money usually buys. In those moments, Dollywood transcends business. It becomes an act of poetic justice. The girl who had nothing creating a place where others like her can have everything. But while Dollywood flourishes, another project is brewing in her mind, one even more personal and ambitious. A revolution in children's literacy that will change millions of lives. 1995. Dolly Parton visits her hometown of Sevier County, Tennessee, for a family funeral. At the gathering afterward, she talks with cousins, neighbors, people she's known all her life. And she notices something that deeply disturbs her. Many adults of her generation, intelligent and capable people, can barely read. Her own father, Robert Lee, never learned. Dolly remembers the shame in his eyes when he had to ask for help with paperwork, the silent humiliation of being illiterate in a world that demands reading. That night in her hotel room, Dolly can't sleep. There are millions of children like her, born into poverty where books are an unattainable luxury. She decides to do something radical. The idea is simple to the point of madness. Send a free book every month to every child from birth to age 5 in their home county. Completely free, no applications, no income verification. If you live in the county and have a baby, you get books. Their financial advisors crunch the numbers and are horrified. Hundreds of thousands of dollars a year just for one small county. For what? Children from educated families already have access to books. Those from poor families? Well, many won't prioritize reading anyway. It's wasted money. Dolly listens to their arguments and dismisses them all. My father couldn't read me stories, she says simply. No child should grow up like that. She launched the program in 1995 with a perfect name, Imagination Library. The first book each baby receives is The Little Engine That Could, the story of the little train that could, with a dedication from Dolly. Each month thereafter, another book arrives in the mail, selected by child development experts to be age-appropriate. The books arrive addressed to the child, not the parents. It's their mail. For children in poverty, it might be the first mail they ever receive, the first object that is undeniably theirs. Dolly understands the psychological power of this. It's not charity that humiliates, it's a gift that dignifies. Within the first year, local libraries report something extraordinary. Circulation of children's books increases dramatically. Parents who had never visited libraries before now bring their children. Preschool teachers notice that more children arrive with prior exposure to books. Pediatricians observe that parents read more to their babies during checkups. The program creates a ripple effect. A free book each month not only benefits the child but also transforms entire family dynamics. Preliminary data suggests that children in the program enter kindergarten with broader vocabularies, better prepared to learn. Dolly has proven its effectiveness. By 2000, Imagination Library had expanded to other counties in Tennessee. By 2005, to other states. The model was ingenious. Dolly covered roughly half the cost of each book, with local communities contributing the other half through foundations, governments, or businesses. This fostered local investment and sustainability. Communities in Canada, the United Kingdom, and Australia applied to participate. Dolly agreed. The program went international. By 2010, 1 million children were receiving books monthly. By 2020, nearly 2 million. It was the largest distribution of free children's books in history. But the academic world is initially skeptical. Does simply sending books really improve literacy? Or is it well-intentioned sentimentality with no measurable impact? Researchers at prestigious universities design rigorous studies. The results, published in peer-reviewed academic journals, are unequivocal. Children in the Imagination Library show statistically significant improvements in kindergarten readiness, letter recognition, vocabulary, and love of reading. The effect is especially pronounced in low-income communities. Skeptics become advocates. Dolly has achieved something that government programs with massive budgets could not: move the needle on early literacy. But maintaining Imagination Library requires constant and exhausting fundraising. Dolly dedicates significant time to cultivating donors, attending charity events, and convincing local governments to invest. Now in her 60s and 70s, she could comfortably retire. Instead, she works tirelessly for the program. When regions face economic crises and threaten to cut funding, Dolly personally covers costs. During the 2020 pandemic, when local budgets collapsed, she ensured that no child lost their books. She has invested more than $100 million of her personal fortune. Friends ask why she doesn't simply make one large, one-time donation and walk away. Her answer: this isn't a project. It's my legacy. The letters arrive in droves. Single mothers write about how the monthly books give them something to do with their children when they can't afford activities. Parents in prison write that their children read Dolly's books to them during visits, creating connection where before there was only shame. Teachers share that they can identify which students attended Imagination Library because of their love of books. One particularly moving letter comes from a man in his 30s. As a child, he received Dolly's books. Now he teaches in the same impoverished community where he grew up, reading Imagination Library books to his own students. The cycle continues. By 2015, researchers were noticing an unexpected side effect. Communities with high Imagination Library penetration showed increases in property values, decreases in juvenile crime, and greater civic engagement. Early literacy not only affects individual academic performance but also transforms entire social fabrics. Areas that were once book deserts, communities without a single bookstore or library, now have vibrant reading cultures. Dolly has proven that investment in early childhood generates compound returns that no traditional economic model could predict. Economists coined the term, the Dolly effect. February 2016. Imagination Library delivers its 100 millionth book. Dolly personally attends the celebration at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. Politicians from both parties praise her. The Library of Congress names her its first Librarian of Imagination. Global media cover the story. But the most significant moment happens afterward, away from the cameras. Dolly visits a foster home in D.C. and personally reads to young children, many with histories of trauma and neglect. She holds a 4-year-old girl on her lap as she reads, The Little Engine That Could. The girl whispers, Is that little train like me? Dolly replies, Just like you, sweetheart. You can do anything. In that moment, the 100 million books become real, not statistics, but the transformation of one life at a time. But while Dolly builds libraries in children's minds, her own life is about to face its greatest test. March 2020. The world is gripped by global panic as COVID-19 spreads unchecked. Economies collapse, hospitals are overwhelmed, and millions huddle in terror at home. Dollywood shuts down abruptly, leaving thousands of employees in limbo. The entertainment industry grinds to a halt. Dolly, now 74, is in the highest risk demographic. Her assistants urge her to completely isolate herself in her Nashville mansion. But Dolly watches the news with growing horror. She sees healthcare workers without protective gear. She sees families losing jobs and falling into poverty. She sees the fear in everyone's eyes. And she decides she can't just hide. But first, she must ensure her employees survive. In a move that shocks the corporate world, Dolly announces she will personally pay every Dollywood employee during the shutdown, with full benefits intact. The cost will be millions of dollars with no corresponding revenue. Financial analysts declare it unsustainable. But Dolly is adamant. My people have been loyal to me for decades. Now it's my turn. Other entertainment companies are laying off staff en masse. Dolly is paying full salaries. The news goes viral. In a time of widespread corporate cynicism, her loyalty to ordinary workers resonates powerfully. April 2020. Dolly's phone rings. It's an old friend from Vanderbilt University in Nashville, home to one of the world's leading vaccine research centers. Dr. Abumrad, who once treated Dolly after a car accident, explains that his team is working frantically on COVID vaccine research. They're very close to crucial breakthroughs, but federal funding is stuck in red tape. They need money immediately to continue the work that could save millions of lives. They need $1 million. Dolly listens, asks a few questions, and then says simply, "You'll have it tomorrow." Dolly donates the $1 million without public announcement, press conference, or fanfare. Vanderbilt quietly posts the donation on its website but doesn't launch a media campaign. Dolly doesn't want attention, she wants results. In an era where every celebrity act of charity becomes social media content, her silence is radical. Only months later, when researchers publish promising preliminary results, does Dolly's donation gain media traction. By then, she's already focused on the next problem. Her neighbors in the Tennessee mountains are suffering, and no one else seems to care. During the summer and fall of 2020, Dolly worked discreetly with local organizations to provide direct financial assistance to struggling families in Tennessee during the pandemic. She paid back rent. She bought groceries. She covered medical bills. She funded food distributions. She didn't seek credit. Local organizations often didn't disclose that the money came from her. Her team worked to identify needs and send aid quickly, without red tape. It was philanthropy operated like an efficient business. Identify a problem, implement a solution, measure the impact, repeat. Thousands of families in Appalachia survived the pandemic because Dolly Parton decided she couldn't stand idly by. November 2020. Moderna announces that its COVID vaccine is 95% effective. It's a monumental breakthrough, the beginning of the end of the pandemic. Among the company's acknowledgments is the research work of Vanderbilt, directly funded by Dolly's donation. The global media suddenly connects the dots. Dolly Parton helped fund the Moderna vaccine. The story explodes. Suddenly, Dolly isn't just a country icon, she's a public health hero. Memes flood the internet. Dolly Parton not only wrote Jolene in a day, she also helped cure COVID. The younger generation, perhaps unfamiliar with her music, now venerates her. With vaccine approval imminent but public skepticism growing, health officials faced a crisis: how to convince millions to get vaccinated. In March 2021, Dolly posted a video of herself receiving her Moderna dose. She did so with her characteristic humor, singing "Vaccine, Vaccine, Vaccine, Vaccine" to the tune of Jolene. It was perfect. It demystified the process, normalized vaccination, and used her influence without being condescending. The video went massively viral. Subsequent studies showed that her endorsement significantly increased vaccination intention among skeptical populations, especially in the rural South. Dolly, without intending to, became a central figure in public health. But the political atmosphere is poisoned. The pandemic has been politicized to the point of absurdity. Wearing masks has become a political statement. Vaccines are an ideological battleground. Dolly navigates this minefield with extraordinary care. She refuses to criticize the unvaccinated. She refuses to make vaccination a partisan issue. When pressed to denounce skeptics, she simply says, everyone should do what they feel is right. It's a deliberate strategy to maintain credibility with everyone while gently nudging in the right direction. Not everyone appreciates her restraint. Some accuse her of moral cowardice. But her goal isn't to win arguments, it's to save lives. Honors poor and universities award honorary doctorates. Medical organizations recognize her. Johns Hopkins proposes naming a scholarship program after her. But the validation that means the most comes from her hometown. Sevier County, Tennessee, declares an official Dolly Parton Day. Not for her music or her money, but for her character. How she never forgot where she came from, how she used her platform to help the invisible. Elderly people who knew her as a child weep at the ceremony. We always knew she was special, they say. But we never imagined this. As the world gradually emerges from the pandemic in 2021 and 2022, thinkers and journalists reflect on lessons learned. Why did a 74-year-old country singer respond more effectively than governments with multi-billion-dollar budgets? The answer is uncomfortable. Dolly never lost touch with ordinary people. While elites debated in the abstract, she viscerally understood fear, need, and the pragmatism required. But the broader lesson, that success doesn't require forgetting one's origins, that wealth comes with responsibility, that fame is a platform for service, doesn't seem to sink in. Dolly is revered as an exception, not a role model. And as the world moves on, she prepares for her final act, confronting her own mortality and ensuring her legacy lives on. 2022. Dolly Parton looks at herself in the mirror of her dressing room before a concert. She is 76 years old. The face that stares back at her is carefully made up, perfectly lit, the wig as flawless as ever. But she knows what lies beneath, the wrinkles that no surgery can completely erase, the hands that betray their age no matter how much lotion is used, the body that no longer moves with the energy of her 30s. She has lived longer than many in her family. Her father died at 79. Several siblings have already passed away. Mortality, once a distant abstraction, is now a constant visitor in her thoughts. The question that haunts her: when she is gone, what will remain? One worry consumes Dolly: her song catalog. She has written more than 3,000 compositions over 6 decades. I Will Always Love You alone has earned her more than $20 million in royalties, especially after Whitney Houston turned it into a global mega-hit in 1992. Her catalog is worth hundreds of millions. But the music industry is changing violently. Artists are selling their catalogs to investment funds for astronomical sums. Bob Dylan sold his for more than $300 million. Should Dolly do the same? Her financial team begs her to consider it. It could secure her family's fortune for generations. But after months of deliberation, Dolly decides she won't sell. Her songs aren't merely financial assets, they're her children. Each composition represents a moment in her life, a captured emotion, a story told. Selling them to strangers who will see them only as vehicles for profit feels like betrayal. Moreover, retaining control allows her to dictate how they're used, which commercials can license them, which films, which political causes, none. Her songs have avoided partisan alignment for decades because she controls them. Selling would mean losing that protection. Her decision baffles financial analysts but makes perfect sense to someone who has maintained control of her life and career against all odds. 2023. Dolly announces plans for a massive expansion of Dollywood, a comprehensive biographical museum that will document not only her career but the entire Appalachian culture that shaped her. It will be an interactive archive. Visitors will be able to listen to rare recordings, see costumes from her career, read her handwritten lyrics, and understand the historical context of each era. But more importantly, it will connect her story to the stories of thousands of anonymous mountain families. I'm not special, Dolly insists. I'm a product of a culture and a community. The museum will celebrate that. It's another massive investment in legacy over immediate profit. Carl Dean, her husband of nearly 60 years, now in his 80s, rarely speaks to the media. But in an exceptional interview with an authorized biographer, he reveals something surprising. He and Dolly have had explicit conversations about his death. They are not morbid but practical. Carl has insisted that when he dies, Dolly should not withdraw from the public eye in performative mourning. She should continue working, creating, living fully. Similarly, Dolly has left instructions. If she dies first, Carl should remain in the privacy he always preferred, without feeling obligated to perform grief publicly. It is an agreement of mature love, to protect each other even in death. Dolly's biggest concern is the survival of the imagination library after her death. Will it continue without her personal presence to raise funds and generate attention? In 2022, she works with lawyers to create a shielded trust structure. Significant funds are specifically set aside to sustain the program indefinitely. She recruits a board of directors of philanthropists, educators, and civic leaders committed to the mission. She develops a leadership transition plan. The Imagination Library must outlive Dolly Parton the person and become an immortal institution. When I'm gone, she says, I want millions of children to continue receiving books. Not because they remember me, but because they deserve the chance. 2024. Dolly announces what she calls her Gratitude Tour, a series of concerts in intimate venues instead of massive stadiums. It will be an opportunity to personally thank fans who have sustained her for decades. But it's also a moment of recognition. She doesn't know how many more tours she has left physically. Rehearsals are harder than before. Her voice, though still powerful, requires more care, more warm-up, more rest between shows. Her body protests against constant travel. But when she steps onto the stage and sees the faces, grandmothers who have followed her since the 60s, middle-aged parents who grew up with her music, young people who discovered Jolene on TikTok, all the pain disappears. As she ages, Dolly intensifies her efforts to keep her extended family together. The 11 Parton siblings, now scattered across the country, many with their own children and grandchildren, reunite annually at events organized by Dolly. She pays for travel, accommodations, and makes everyone feel special. But there are also tensions. Some siblings have struggled with addiction, financial problems, and family conflicts. Dolly navigates these dramas with exhausting patience, frequently mediating disputes and offering discreet financial assistance. Her goal: to ensure that when she's gone, the Parton family remains connected, that cousins meet cousins, and that stories are passed down. For decades, publishers have offered obscene sums for Dolly's complete and censored autobiography. She has always declined. But now she begins to write, not for immediate publication but as a document for the future. She writes about things she has never discussed publicly, moments of deep self-doubt, decisions she regrets, people who betrayed her, the psychological toll of maintaining a public persona for 70 years. She writes about her marriage with an honesty she has never shown publicly. It is not to satisfy morbid curiosity but to leave a true record. After I'm gone, she writes, people will invent all sorts of stories. I want the truth to exist, even if it is read decades later. Spring of 2025. In a reflective interview, Dolly discusses legacy with unusual vulnerability. I'm not worried about being forgotten, she says. I'm worried that people will remember only the wig and the jokes, and forget the work. Forget Imagination Library. Forget Dollywood and the jobs it created. Forget the causes. Her greatest fear is being reduced to a caricature, an image without substance. But then she smiles with that inextinguishable optimism that has defined her life. But I can't control how I'm remembered. I can only keep working hard until the end. And that's exactly what she does. Even as her body ages, her mind remains fierce, already planning the next project, the next song, the next way to help. Because for Dolly Parton, stopping would mean giving up. And that's something the Barefoot girl from Locust Ridge never learned to do. One question has haunted Dolly Parton in nearly every interview for the past few decades. Who is the real Dolly? Interviewers search for cracks in the facade, moments where the mask slips and reveals the woman beneath. But Dolly has perfected her response. The Dolly you see is real. She's just exaggerated. It's a brilliant and frustrating statement. But is it true? Or after 7 decades of building a persona, has the line between Dolly Parton the brand and Dolly Parton the woman become irreversibly blurred? Those closest to her, call her family, old friends, insist there is a difference. In private, they say she's quieter, more contemplative, less on. But even they admit, she never completely shuts down. Maintaining total control over her image and career for 7 decades has required exhausting vigilance. Dolly reads every contract personally. She approves every photograph published. She carefully controls what personal information is made public. This need for control stems from early trauma, the years with Porter Wagoner when others made decisions for her. But control comes at a price. Relationships have fractured when people felt Dolly couldn't allow genuine vulnerability. Friendships ended when they crossed boundaries she set. Absolute control prevents exploitation, but it also isolates. Dolly lives in a fortress of her own making. Feminism has had a complicated relationship with Dolly Parton. In the 70s and 80s, second-wave feminists criticized her for reinforcing harmful female stereotypes. Her hair, her makeup, her emphasis on her body, her deliberately high-pitched voice. They saw her as complicit with the patriarchy. But later generations have reassessed. Dolly completely controls her image, built an empire in a male-dominated industry, and never allowed others to define her worth. She uses femininity as both a weapon and a shield. "I'm not an offended feminist," she has said, "but I believe in myself." It's a pragmatic feminism that frustrates purists but has proven undeniably effective. Dolly has had a massive and devoted LGBTQ+ fanbase since the 70s. Gay clubs play 9 to 5 religiously. Drag queens constantly emulate her. The community embraced her as an icon for understandable reasons. Her persona is conscious performance, her defiance of critics resonates with marginalized people, and her songs about love and loss transcend gender. Dolly has reciprocated with clear love, appearing at Pride events and advocating for LGBTQ+ rights in interviews. But she has also avoided direct political activism that would alienate her conservative base. She walks a fine line, allied enough to be genuine, diplomatic enough to maintain a universal audience. Not everyone accepts this balance. In 2019, Dolly admitted in an interview that she had struggled with eating disorders for decades. The pressure to maintain a specific image, to fit into tight clothes, to look perpetually young, had led to years of unhealthy eating behavior. She had experienced periods of starvation followed by binge eating, cycles of weight loss and gain, and dependence on diet pills. It was a rare admission of imperfection, a glimpse behind the curtain. Many fans responded with gratitude. Even Dolly Parton, seemingly invincible, struggles. The vulnerability humanized the icon. But it also revealed the dark cost of fame. Decades of brutal self-evaluation, a body transformed into a product that had to be maintained. Dolly was raised in the strict Appalachian Pentecostal tradition. Ecstatic services, speaking in tongues, and a literal interpretation of the Bible. That faith shaped her core values: hard work, service to others, and constant gratitude. But as her world expanded, her theology evolved. She has never renounced Christianity, but her version is more inclusive, less dogmatic. When conservative pastors criticize her support for the LGBTQ+ community, she responds, "God doesn't make mistakes." When pressed about abortion or politics, she deflects, "My job is to love, not judge." It's practical Christianity that infuriates fundamentalists but resonates with millions who hold faith without fanaticism. What Dolly never discusses at length: the sacrifices required by her level of success. The decision not to have children, partly medical but also pragmatic. Her career wouldn't have allowed for traditional motherhood. The friendships lost because there simply wasn't time. The years when she saw Carl for a total of a few weeks a year due to constant touring. The missed family gatherings, the funerals she couldn't attend, the birthdays celebrated backstage between shows. Her family in the mountains grew up while she was away. Nephews and nieces who barely know her outside of her public persona. Massive success requires massive sacrifices that are rarely quantified until it's too late to recover them. In a private vault, Dolly keeps an exhaustive archive, demo recordings of every song she wrote, including hundreds that were never released. Sporadic diaries from her teenage years. Photographs of moments that were never made public. Letters from fans that particularly touched her. Objects from her childhood. A doll made from an ear of corn, her first pair of shoes, the tin can she turned into a guitar. It is a personal museum, a collection of her identity that only she sees. Her testamentary instructions specify that certain materials remain sealed for 50 years after her death, others for 100. She will control her narrative even from beyond the grave, releasing truths only when those involved are dead and the context has changed. Forbes and other publications estimate Dolly's wealth at $600 million, perhaps more. But the true figure is a mystery known only to her inner circle. Dolly is notoriously private about specific finances. What is clear: she has donated hundreds of millions to charitable causes, probably more than many wealthier celebrities possess in total. Her personal lifestyle is comfortable but not obscenely ostentatious. The mansions are luxurious but not vulgar. No yachts, no private jets until recent years, and only for medical necessity and security. Wealth is a tool, not an end in itself. Money is excellent for doing things, she says, but a terrible reason to do things. No one knows when it will come, but Dolly has planned meticulously. Her funeral instructions are specific: a private ceremony for family only, followed by a public celebration in Dollywood where fans can come to pay their respects. No forced mourning. She wants joyful music, funny stories, celebration instead of sadness. She has prepared a video message to be played at her funeral, thanking everyone one last time. She has written personal letters to loved ones, sealed until her death. And she has composed a final song, recorded but not released, with instructions to publish it posthumously. Her last composition, naturally, will be a love letter to her family, to her fans, to the mountains she never forgot. But Dolly Parton's true legacy won't be measured in songs or dollars. It will be measured in children who learned to read thanks to Imagination Library and grew up to break cycles of poverty. It will be measured in Dollywood employees who fed families with dignified jobs when no other option existed. It will be measured in how she transformed the perception of Appalachia from a land of ignorant hillbillies to a rich culture worthy of respect. It will be measured in women who saw that they could control their narratives, use femininity as power, and be both glamorous and intelligent without asking permission. If there's one lesson in Dolly Parton's life, it's this: success without memory is hollow. She reached heights no girl from Locust Ridge had the right to dream of. But she never forgot the cold of that cabin, the hunger in those children's stomachs, the shame of extreme poverty. And instead of running from those memories, she turned them into a mission. Everything she built, Dollywood, Imagination Library, her tireless philanthropy, is rooted in a simple truth: she had luck, talent, and fierce determination, but she also needed help in crucial moments. And those who succeed have an obligation to extend a hand to those who come after them. So, who is Dolly Parton really? She is all contradictions simultaneously. She is the calculating businesswoman who donates her fortune. She is the carefully constructed person who contains genuine emotional truth. She is the serious artist frequently underrated because of her presentation. She is the devout Christian who embraces those her church would reject. She is the proud patriot who gently critiques her country's shortcomings. She is the feminist who rejects labels while living by the values. She is the ruthless entrepreneur with a genuinely tender heart. She is a product of extreme poverty who never lost empathy for the poor. She is a survivor of brutal industry who retained kindness. She is a 79-year-old woman who never stopped working, never stopped creating, never stopped caring. 2025. Dolly is still touring, still writing, still planning. Imagination Library has just delivered her 200 millionth book. Dollywood announces a new expansion. There's an album in production because of course there is. Her hair is taller than ever, her laugh as infectious as ever, her determination unwavering. In a recent interview, when a reporter asks her about retirement, Dolly laughs. "I'll retire when I'm dead. And even then, I'll probably have projects lined up." She's not joking. It's true. The story began in a one-room cabin on a cold January day in 1946. A baby girl was born into such extreme poverty that it seemed a sealed destiny. A hard life in a forgotten valley, a young marriage, children of her own, the cycle repeating itself. But that baby girl had a voice that defied circumstances. She had dreams bigger than the mountains that surrounded her. And she had something more, an absolute determination not only to escape poverty, but to transform it into purpose. 79 years later, Dolly Parton stands on the Dollywood stage on a summer night. Lights illuminate her impossible hair. Thousands sing along. But for a moment, she closes her eyes and she's back on that porch in Locust Ridge, barefoot on splintered wood, singing to the mountains. The mountains that never left her. The mountains that shaped her. The mountains that taught her that where you come from doesn't define where you can go, it just reminds you why the journey matters. The barefoot girl became queen. But she never forgot her bare feet. And that memory changed the world. Dolly Parton's life proves that the greatest success isn't how high you climb, but how many hands you extend on the way up. From the mountains to immortality, she never let go of the ropes that tied her to home.